Joining us on the Mercedes-Benz Vans phone line from the NFL owners meeting, I believe in the Metroplex, from Sports Illustrated, Albert Breer. How you doing, Bert?
I'm doing good. I guess we could start like an Eisen 23 hashtag for your competition committee.
Absolutely.
There,
yes.
right?
Albert, you know I'd be Albert, you and I have our disagreements, and I think, by the way, our cooling off period is sufficient.
I do want to make one thing clear on that. Like, I never ducked anybody.
No, you didn't. I didn't invite. I didn't invite. I did not invite.
I didn't get the invite, so I just want to make sure that that's clear.
Albert, it's clear.
I have been accused of ducking this, and I'm not ducking it.
Who's accusing you of ducking it? Who's accusing you?
A lot of people. And so I every so often I'll get like these on social media, like, why hasn't Breer been on Eisen? Why hasn't Breer been on Eisen? So I just want to make clear that that wasn't my choice.
It was definitely my choice to have a cooling off period. I think it was I think it was smart. And also, I think you'll agree. I think I was being a good friend. I was being a good friend by not giving you a microphone, say, in the first 48 to 72 hours of that game being played.
That is, I would say that time frame is fair. 48 to 72 hours fair. Yeah,
but the reason why I bring up the fact that we've had our disagreements, you can agree, I would be a great competition committee member. Great.
Honestly, like, I don't like. Which I'm being forthright here.
Sure,
like, I do think having like the citizen's voice on something like this would be big. I mean, in fact, I brought like the public's view on this up to Troy Vincent today in that press conference, and that like it's the way this is being officiated now isn't fair to the defensive players, and at some point I understand wanting to protect quarterbacks, and that's what the game is about now. And no one wants to see any of these guys go down. Kyler goes down the other night, and that sucks seeing that every single time. But like there does seem to be a line that's been crossed where it's, a defensive player, like, how does he do his job anymore? And so I think things like that, like, that are so heavily discussed publicly, it's, I think, important to take that point of view into those rooms. And I think those rooms can become so insular. You know what I mean? Like, and having an outside voice, I think, would be helpful, to all sorts of committees that the NFL has, and certainly the competition committee, because it's so forward-facing. I think would be near the top of the list.
Well, I mean, the phrase, we hear it all the time, certainly when it came to the catch rule, Albert Breer, and now what's happening with roughing the passer calls. If 100 people sitting in a bar can agree on it, then that's what it should be called. Why not have somebody who actually talks to people in a bar? Right. Or 100 people in a week, like that's what I feel like I could bring. But in all seriousness,
you bring common sense.
Yeah,
it's really that's the easiest way to describe it.
Right. Well,
somebody who can bring common sense into the room.
Yeah, and the common sense of it is you already have a system set up to review plays on the spot to make sure the ruling on the field is correct in real time when it comes to fumbles, when it comes to possession, when it comes to spotting a football, when it comes to feet being down or not. Why not fold into that reviewing a flag that's already been thrown? Because, again, to me, making roughing the passer reviewable on both sides, meaning let's take a look to see if we didn't call it and it should have been called, you're opening up a Pandora's box there. If a flag is thrown on the field for roughing, let's take a moment and have people review it in real time the same way that they review something that's on the field for a fumble or anything like that. And I don't know what the problem with that would be. What are you hearing ear to the ground there in Dallas on this very subject?
Honestly,
Albert?
like, I think back to the discussions I've had with the the coaches that are on that Madden committee, Andy Reid and John Harbaugh, Bill O'Brien was on it when he was in the NFL. And,
yes.
Like, all those guys were in favor of the sky judge, right? And I think that's something that the technology is available. You know what I mean? Like, you can put somebody up in the booth and give them real power, and have that person in the booth be able to impart that common sense down to the field, right? And like, it can be as simple as, like, the ref having the earpiece and somebody buzzing down and saying, pick the flag up. You know what I mean? Like, you got that wrong, pick the flag up. It can, like, I don't know why all these things have to be officiated on the field. I don't know why we can't give them that second set of eyes up top, And I think the NFL could save itself a lot of grief if they just went all in on having a sky judge up top who could help the officiating crew get things right. You and I have both stood on the sideline for NFL games.
It's fast.
I don't know how anybody makes. I don't know how anybody makes heads or tails from field level, and how fast all of that's moving, Rich.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why wouldn't you want to help the people that are down there see everything? I think the idea of having somebody up top who can buzz down to the head official whenever it's necessary, and say that wasn't pass interference. It's obvious. The replay's coming in. Like, pick that flag up, or that was pass interference. Drop the flag. Why not just give the officials on the field the same advantage that you or I have sitting on the couch watching a game, which is 9 different angles of every play? I don't get it, and I know those coaches didn't get it when they got shot down on it. And I mean, some of that already goes on. They already do utilize some of that stuff to some degree. But I think formalizing it and making it more across the board, I'd be all for it, and I've been all for it for a long time.
And any sense if people down there are all for it? Like, what are you hearing?
Well, I think it's going to sort of that's the thing is, like, the coaches were the ones that were sort of behind this, a couple of years ago. And, they aren't involved yet with the competition committee because they're all in their season. So, they meet, the coaches subcommittee, I know, starts talking at the combine, and they'll meet with the competition committee there. And then obviously, I think it's a month after that when the annual meeting happens. And so if the ball's going to get rolling on that this year, it would probably start right around the combine. And then if there was anything to be voted on, it would happen at the end of March in Arizona.
So then let's create the Eisen subcommittee while the season goes on, and momentum can start on.
Can I serve on that?
Yeah, do it. Start spreading the rumor around there. Spread the rumor around there. I'll back your play, Albert. You know that. Albert Breer here on the Rich Eisen Show from Sports Illustrated. So let's talk injuries. Is Brock Purdy hurt? I know he said he was real sore. But, is it possible he doesn't go Thursday night, really, for San Francisco?
I think he's going.
Okay.
I mean, he's a little nicked up, but I think he'll be good to go. And they have, I just tell you this, Rich, like, I don't know if Brock Purdy's going to be, like a long-term starter in the NFL. What I do know is the people in that building have a lot of confidence in him. And, talking to Trent Williams, who's, a future Hall of Fame left tackle, after that game on Sunday, the toughness Purdy showed in fighting through everything, the way that he was able to operate an NFL offense, the background he had coming from a place like Iowa State and taking it to, a level that program hadn't been to before and running a pro offense there. Trent said, going back to the summer, he could see the kid could be a starting quarterback. And, one of the things that sort of came up, and this was, Jimmy gets hurt, and, I'm just kind of going back and forth with a few Niners guys, like, hey, that sucks. You guys are down to your third quarterback. You got such a talented roster, you go back and forth with people with that sort of stuff when major injuries happen. And what I got back uniformly from the San Francisco people was, don't sleep on Brock Purdy, over and over and over again. So, again, I don't know if he's going to be, a long-term starting quarterback in the NFL, but I can say there's a lot of confidence in that building where they don't think that the drop-off from Garoppolo to Purdy is going to be anywhere near what the general public thinks.
Well, we're seeing that already, aren't we? I mean, we're already seeing that. When I'm in the booth with Kurt Warner, middle game of the Saturday triple header on NFL Network, Browns, Ravens, which quarterback for the Ravens am I calling the game and describing the action of? What do you think?
I mean, I think it sounds like Tyler Huntley's trending in the right direction. My guess would be Lamar doesn't go, but I think it'll probably be Tyler Huntley. And look, this is a huge game for the Ravens. They've lost ground, of course, over the last few weeks. The Bengals are red hot. And they look like the team that got to the Super Bowl last year. So my guess would be you'll be calling a game like Tyler Huntley as their starting quarterback.
Yeah, huh? I mean, Anthony Brown is a backup, or he could get the start too. But your sense is Lamar,
right.
They're not going to push it with Lamar. They're going to give him one more week?
I mean, I just look, my sense is like the sense I've gotten is that they're going to be cautious with him. Obviously it's a little complicated because of the contract situation and everything that goes into that, and so, I think that they're going to – I don't think they're going to push Lamar if he's not ready.
Albert Breer here on the Rich Eisen Show. So what is the I guess story do you think going into Week 15, Albert? I mean, what is in your notebook? What are you hearing about? Like, what is your sense? Hot seats or playoff positioning, anything like that? You always have your ear to the ground.
Yeah, I mean, like the hot seat like stuff. Like I would say that it always feels like when you're in November, it's like, well, there aren't going to be very many openings, and then you get to December and there starts to be talk about this place or that place. And so, obviously Indianapolis and Carolina already have openings, and they're going to run coaching searches. We'll see whether or not they give serious consideration to elevating their interim coaches. Steve Wilkes has done a really nice job, in Carolina, and Jeff Saturday, obviously the owner loves him there. So we'll see whether or not he feels comfortable elevating him. And then beyond that, I mean, the one thing that's sort of interesting about all of this is, you could have a couple one and dones, and then you could have in Arizona an owner eating a lot of contract on the coach and general manager potentially. And I think it sort of signals a changing dynamic in the NFL where, it used to be that a coach would get like 3 years of runway, and owners wouldn't want to have to write checks for 4 years, after they fire a coach and all that different stuff. I think the new television money is changing the dynamic a little bit, and I think the escalating price of the premier head coach is going to change some of that too. And so, like Arizona, Steve Keim and Cliff Kingsbury have 5 years left on their deals. Generally, Arizona isn't a franchise that would spend on coaches and general managers who aren't working for them anymore. But has that dynamic changed? I think it's possible. Denver, Nathaniel Hackett, Houston, Lovie Smith, that would be the second straight year the Texans go one and done, So I think that's what's sort of interesting about what's going to happen this year is you could see guys that have been in the job for a lot shorter or have a lot of years left in their contract getting fired, where, in the past, sometimes those sorts of things have made it prohibitive to get rid of a guy.
What about quarterback changes? I mean, Brady clearly seems to be at the end of his Tampa stay if he wants to stay in it. And then that would present quite an option for anybody that wants to just go all in for 1 year or 2 years. You got Baker, who you had a fascinating article about how Sean McVay got him up to speed and just threw him in the deep end. I have no idea about Stafford's long-term plan, if he's healthy enough or not. I mean, what's your ear to the ground on quarterbacks that might change in the NFL?
Yeah, so I mean, I think with Tom is going to be an interesting one. I don't think he knows whether or not he's going to play in 2023 yet. I think if he does, it probably won't be in Tampa. And I think the two teams to watch there are San Francisco and Las Vegas. I think one of the things he probably has a better appreciation for is the way he was coached in New England, how hard he was coached in New England, and how tight the operation was. And so, he's got great respect for Kyle Shanahan, and the Niners have sort of kept that door open consistently over the last couple of years after they decided not to pursue him in 2020. So I certainly think that could be possible, depending on how the rest of the Niners season goes and where they're at on Trey Lance. Vegas has an important decision to make on Derek Carr. They're in his contract. If he's on the roster, I think it's 3 days after the Super Bowl, then $40 million in that deal vests and becomes fully guaranteed. So if they're going to move on from him, they have to make that decision in mid-February. So we'll know relatively soon on that. And, the Raiders, obviously, with Josh McDaniels there, would have the option of not one but two guys with Patriot background in Tom Brady and Jimmy Garoppolo that could be available to them. And then, you mentioned the Rams and Stafford. I've never gotten the sense that Matthew's a guy who's going to hang around into his 40s. I just don't think that that's who he is. He's made his money. He's got his ring, and he's pretty beat up. Now, do I think he wants to go out like this? No. But I know the arm thing has lingered, and now you've got the concussion issue. And again, this is a guy who's just taken a lot of hits. I mean, one of the tougher guys in the NFL. He's taken a lot of hits and a lot of damage on his body. And you just wonder with him, does it come to a point where you're like, okay, I've accomplished what I want to accomplish. It's time to go live the rest of my life. I certainly could see that being in play for him at the very least. And, I think that's why, like the way the Rams look at it, Baker Mayfield's sort of their first swing at, like, how would we eventually replace Matthew Stafford whenever he is to walk away. I think the people in that organization know, like, sometimes you have to take more than one swing to get it right. So I think when they claimed Baker off of waivers, this is a worthy swing, just taking a swing at a guy who's the first overall pick a few years back, has over 40 NFL starts under his belt, and has a good scheme fit for what we're trying to do.
And then I guess, with the next game being San Francisco and Seattle, if, in Munich, when I was there about a month ago, the idea of Geno being the long-term answer there for Seattle was absolutely, in my mind, a distinct possibility. And, obviously this is a knee-jerk thing to say, but you take a look right now at the NFC playoff picture, and the Seahawks are now on the outside looking in, and the draft choice that they get for Russell Wilson is now second overall. I mean, how is that all playing out? Like, so they could pretty much have most any quarterback they want in the draft now, if this is the way.
Wild.
I mean, so the next weeks are really crucial.
Detroit has the Rams pick.
Right.
Everyone thought that was going to be like low 20s, early 30s.
Right.
And they're going to have a top 5 pick also, I think Seattle. I think Seattle's going to make an effort to keep Geno. I think the right way to look at this, and I probably brought this example up in the past to you. It's sort of like how I think the Vikings have handled Kirk Cousins, how the Raiders handled Derek Carr. When Josh and Dave Ziegler got there last year. I think the Seahawks sort of view Geno as like this could be like what Alex Smith was for Andy Reid in Kansas City, where Alex put them in a position to compete on a year-to-year basis, build up the rest of the roster, and they never had to force anything on a quarterback that maybe they weren't sold on. And it allowed them to be patient until they found somebody that they were really in love with in the draft, and that wound up being Patrick Mahomes. And so, I think that's sort of the way Seattle views it is we can sign him to maybe a 3, 4, 5-year deal, whatever it is, and he can be our bridge quarterback to get us to the next guy. And then I think you go into the draft, and I think on this group, like Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Will Levis, Anthony Richardson, there's going to be a ton of disagreement. And I don't think any of those guys is a perfect prospect. So you're going to have to work around some things and say, whose flaws am I most comfortable with? Or do I want to wait for a year, get a really good player at the top of the draft, and then maybe dive back in next year when you could have Caleb Williams, Drake May, Quinn Ewers, and I'll help you out here, and J.J. McCarthy potentially, right, going into the draft. Mm-hmm. So I think it's one of those things where if you can re-sign a guy like Geno, it gives you a chance to kind of take a multiple-year look at finding the right young quarterback to go all in on.
Albert Breer, thanks for the call. Greatly appreciated. I mean, for our conversation, lots of high expectations coming in, and really intense through the first 2/3, and then a huge, great finish, just like the game in November. That's at least that's my perspective. It just reminds me. It just reminds me of a late Saturday afternoon.
I do need to say this.
Yes,
Rich. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Congratulations on the Big Ten championship. Congratulations on 13-0.
Thank you.
You guys have a fantastic team.
Thank you. There you go. That's next. See, now that
no caveats, no qualifiers.
No, because there really is.
Hopefully,
nothing else to. There's nothing else to say. I mean, I appreciate it. These are facts. I told J.K. Dobbins in hour number 1. He told me a line I should say if he scores. J.K. all day is back in Ohio. He's very excited about that. And I told him, I said, if he does what he wants to do and the team can do what they think they're capable of doing, he can send the crowd home early in Ohio, just like a couple of weeks ago. So I'm living my best life. I appreciate y'all laughing at this, but you would not, and that's why I gave the cooling off period. I don't think you would have given me that answer 72 hours after the game. If I had you on like the Wednesday after the game, But
I think I might have been okay by Wednesday. Monday,
not yet.
Wednesday,
not yet. You hadn't gotten your help from USC by that point. I think if I'd gotten you on the air after USC lost to Utah, then I could have got. Yeah. That's when your attitude began to change a little bit. I think, That's
probably a fair assessment.
In all seriousness, your thoughts against Georgia? What do you think?
I mean, nothing to lose. Obviously losing Travion Henderson and Jackson Smith and Jigba, at the beginning of the year, if you said you're without those two guys, that'd be a massive blow. But I think one of the ththings that's interesting is I say this with respect. I feel like Georgia's sort of supercharged Michigan. You know what I mean? I think the challenge is similar. I think what Georgia brings to the table is going to be very much like what they had to prepare to play against Michigan. So hopefully that helps them. I think the other thing is, they don't often go into games as an underdog. You know what I mean? And they don't often go into games where they don't really have anything to lose, and no one thinks they're going to get it done. So it'll be interesting to see this particular team operate in that environment. And I think the opportunity in front of C.J. Stroud, where right now, he walks away being remembered Stanley Jackson was in the 90s.
Yeah.
If he doesn't win this game versus what could be if he can win two games, I mean, there's a great opportunity for a lot of kids there who've taken it on the chin over the last couple of weeks to change their legacy. So I'm excited to watch that.
Yep, house money. Nobody expects you to win, and you'll see how you can go into a game like that. That'll be a good rehearsal for next year in the big house leading up to that game. So I appreciate.
Yeah, you guys have a lot coming back next year too. So I'm just going to kind of. I'm gonna just kind of take everything in, and I'm gonna take I've taken my medicine.
You have.
So.
I appreciate that, Albert.
Yeah.
Let's do this again shortly. Yeah. We'll speak soon. Thanks for the call and great information.
Thanks,
That's Albert Breer, everybody. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.